Hello everyone and welcome to another interview here on the Cycling Dane Extra channel and the Cycling Dane podcast. Today's guest is the first New Zealand World Tour pro to be interviewed here on the channel, and it is none other than Michael Vink. Michael has an untraditional way into the World Tour racing, being picked up by the superteam UAE Team Emirates after some incredible performances on the virtual training platform MyWhoosh. However, Vink is not just any rider, as he has plenty of successes to his name prior to this unusual discovery. Vink already won the national road race title in New Zealand in 2012, aged just 21, and he has also been the national time trial champion as well as winning the New Zealand Classic back in 2014. So without further ado, here is the interview with Michael Vink, and yes, he is a bit taller than he looks in the picture.
Good morning, Michael, and thank you for joining. And first of all, where are you right now?
Yeah, good morning. I'm currently in the very hot Spain. So yeah, in Girona, a nice wee little base for cyclists.
How's the season been going? Because this is technically your neo-pro season because it's your first year on the World Tour with UAE Team Emirates. So how has it kind of been going? You've been on a few World Tour races as well.
Yeah, it's been definitely a bit of a learning experience for both me and the team. I think in a good way. It's the first time the team has signed a guy partly based on a virtual training platform. So it's been a bit of a case of let's both sort of see how it works. And so far it's been so good. So it's been a busy season. There's been lots of races for me and probably more and more races and more than probably either of us were expecting, and more big races. So that's definitely a good sign, but it makes for a pretty long season.
Have you felt the step up? I mean, we'll go into your past or your past of your career. It's not exactly like you're a newbie to the sport as well. But yeah, how's it kind of been going from Conti level to up to World Tour being a full-time pro?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing with World Tour racing is just the consistency of it and the fact that you have to race so often and the racing is so hard. And I think with that, you're almost never racing at 100%. You're always racing at that sort of 80 or 90. You've got a bit of fatigue from the last race, or there's been a long season, or there's different goals, or something like that. So I think the big thing people underestimate is the need to perform consistently even when you're not at 100%. So even on your maybe not so great days, or your sort of off days, or when you're not, you haven't had the preparation you ideally want, you still have to be able to do a job. And I think that's where the really classic bike riders, I think, can show themselves. Like it's easy to perform well and feel good on your best day, and you can say, oh, if I was there, I could have done this, and this. It's like, yeah, but what, half a season in the legs, and then see how you go.
The reason that you got this opportunity with your UAE Team Emirates was because of MyWhoosh, and yeah, how did that kind of happen? Your fellow, what would I say, Oceanian colleague Jay Vine did the same thing with Swift, but how did it happen for you with MyWhoosh?
Yeah, it's something I sort of started doing through COVID. Really, it was obviously with COVID there was a lot less racing around, and I sort of looked to other areas to try and sort of stay fit and keep that sort of race rhythm, race feeling in the legs, and yeah, MyWhoosh was it. So I did that sort of for a couple of years and ended up being sort of quite successful, won a few races, and yeah, I got a phone call from Mauro Giannini, the general manager of UAE Team Emirates, just saying, hey, can you do you have time for a chat? Sometimes. So that was a bit of a pinch me moment, a bit surreal, but yeah, and then here we are.
I mean, yeah, that isn't the kind of person that you're expecting to get a phone call. What did you kind of think that call was about
Yeah,
beforehand?
I sort of refused to believe it was anything to do with a pro contract. I sort of thought maybe it was to do with a whoosh promotion thing with the team. Maybe they wanted me to do a live event or something with the team, or race one of the guys on the platform or something. And yeah, so I sort of didn't read too much into it. Just sort of kept doing my thing, and yeah. And then he called me and said, we're interested in what you've been doing with MyWhoosh, and we'd like to do some testing. And I sort of said, okay, that's fine. What sort of testing would you like to do? And he sort of sent the protocol through, and I engaged the local sports scientist, and we did the testing and sent it off. And yeah, within the next sort of week or so, he gave me a call and said, yeah, if you want, you've got a contract.
How were you using MyWhoosh? I assume you're still using it, but like, what kind of sessions are you doing? Yeah, just it would be interesting to know because then, like, mere mortals know exactly what pro cyclists actually use these kind of platforms for?
Yeah, mostly for me, it's mostly just the racing that I do. Certainly when it's bad weather outside, or you can't ride outside for whatever reason, maybe you're in a busy city or something like that, then for sure it's really helpful. Just I think the stimulation of having a screen in front of you and an actual road and a bike and something to look at definitely helps. I think most people underestimate that, and particularly in races too. If you're sort of doing an effort by yourself, whether it's a 10-minute effort, you might do X amount of watts, but if you're doing a 10-minute effort trying to hold someone's wheel on a screen, you can do X amount of watts plus 10. And I think people underestimate the sort of psychological effect that racing environment or that race mode has on what you can produce. I'm very fortunate to live in Spain here, where it's good weather pretty much every day and beautiful training roads. It's always easy to find the right climbs for intervals or whatever you need. So I'm lucky that I don't have to use it as much now. I've definitely used it a lot more when I was back in New Zealand when the weather was not as good and through winter. But yeah, it's good also being able to sort of tailor a workout like the testing I did with UAE. One of the header performances, Inigo San Milan sent through the testing protocol, and I literally loaded it into MyWhoosh. So I had the screen going and it did the whole workout for me. So it was nice to be able to do that testing protocol while actually having something on the screen as if it was a MyWhoosh race. And I think I definitely probably pushed a bit more being in that environment as opposed to just being by myself on the erg with no screen, just listening to music. So yeah, I think that was really cool being able to do that.
So you're Michael Vink, you've had the phone call, you've been told you have this pro contract. What kind of happened next? I mean, you're not just joining any team, you're joining the team with Tadej, Juan Ayuso, all these big stars. So yeah.
Yeah, it all sort of happened so quick. So I probably first got the call, I'd say early October, I would say. And then yeah, I think October, November-ish, late October, early November, I was at the team camp. It was probably actually like late October. So that also happened within a few weeks, which was sort of such a whirlwind, particularly from where I'd come from. I hadn't really done too much UCI race or any UCI racing really on the road in the last 2 years before that. So it was kind of a funny moment that, it was probably the year I was least expecting to get a pro contract, that things just seemed to fall into place. There'd sort of been seasons before I'd won some good races or had some good performances as, a 25-year-old, and whatever reason things didn't work out. But this was sort of right place, right time, in front of the right people, and yeah, the rest is history.
I have like a bone to pick with most of the media, and we'll get onto this
Yeah.
because most of the stories about you is you're this nobody who's risen into a world tour contract. That is not the case. You've been a national road champion, time trial champion, winning the New Zealand Classic as well. That's a race that it kind of just pops up on pro cycling stats and you see it because there's no other racing in that time. So yeah, my question here is, how did you kind of get into cycling in New Zealand? Obviously, there's plenty of pros that have come from New Zealand, but New Zealand is kind of very much a rugby country, if I understand correctly, with the All Blacks. So yeah, how was kind of your path into cycling?
Yeah, just it probably originally started through mountain biking. New Zealand's obviously a great place to grow up. We've got plenty of mountains and trails, and everyone's close to the outdoors. So definitely a lot of mountain biking as a kid, and then a winter sport was compulsory through school. And I sort of thought, I like mountain biking, let's try road cycling. And I didn't really like it too much at first, but I ended up sort of being quite good. And then yeah, things sort of grew from there, and I won the sort of a local schools championship type thing, and then I want to say signed with a team, but rode with a small local team and did some of the bigger races, and then basically as soon as I left school, I was gone off to Europe to see what I could do on the bigger stage. So yeah, that's really my path. There's no sort of family history in cycling or anything like that, or nothing was ever really sort of pushed or forced. It was just sort of this natural thing that I just sort of stumbled across and ended up being sort of quite good at it, and just took to it, and yeah.
You've been to the World Championships as well quite early in your career, and then you went to the Trek Livestrong team, which is that's where I'm like, yeah, he's not a nobody. Trek Livestrong don't sign nobodies. That's kind of one of the best under 23 development teams. So how was that experience for you as well?
Yeah, that was interesting. That was probably my first experience as part of a big sort of pro team with the mechanics trucks and all that sort of stuff and the multiple bikes and all that. So that was definitely an interesting year. We had some sort of issues with racing with the UCI because it was the year they sort of implemented the rule that you can't have two teams run by the same management company in the same race, and we were the feeder team for the Radio Shack team. So normally we'd do the Tour of Utah, Tour of Colorado, USA Pro Challenge, and these big races. But because of that, lots of the racing was sort of put on the back burner, and I think I sort of only ended up with so 12 race days for the season. It was like most of the guys on the team. It was sort of a bit of a I don't want to say a disaster, but a bit of an unexpected sort of hiccup along the way. And again, it's sort of, I guess, the story of the last 10 years of my career. There's always been these small things that have sort of got in the way, or something that's happened, and which is actually kind of hard to say because I'm the sort of person that chooses not to believe in luck as such. I always like to say that whether it's true or not, I like to say that I make my own luck. So trying to sort of put my finger on why things haven't worked out and haven't happened, it had been quite tough. So have them finally sort of come together now, I think it's sort of, it's payback for all the years of hard work, the last 10 years of sort of racing at Conti level and for no rewards. So I think, it's sort of the just desserts now.
Your Palmares on the Conti scene is remarkable with, as we said, national road champion, winning so many different races that like the New Zealand Classic, the Tour of Southland as well. I mean, I guess the New Zealand teams, you kind of have this very Asian focused calendar. So if you look at your pro cycling stats, you've basically been everywhere in Asia. But yeah, no, I'm really happy for you that it's not just like a lower world tour level team that you've got. It's the big dogs. It's UAE Team Emirates. But yeah, so how was it kind of the how is it being a Conti Pro, a New Zealand Conti Pro team, or like the budget forklift? How is it like traveling to all these different places? What's the life like? Are you staying in nice hotels, or is it very stressful going all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice in the fact that all we have to do now is really focus on racing our bikes. Everything's taken care of. We have chefs, we have mechanics, we have soigneurs do the washing. Everything's sort of taken care of for us. So it's definitely a case of trying to eke out that last few percent performance-wise, and there's a lot of investment that goes into finding that last sort of 2-3%. Which is kind of what we're about and what is about at the world tour level now. It's so competitive and the top is so tight that if you're not looking for those 1 or 2 percenters, that you get left behind pretty quick. So I think the racing is super high level now. The racing's hard. There's no easy races anymore. It's stressful. You see so many more crashes. It's just a real fight at the top now. So it's cool to be a part of the sport in this moment. It's also hugely motivating to know that there's big opportunities out there, and that the racing is as good as it's ever been. So yeah.
This year with UAE Team Emirates is kind of I don't know, a huge surprise for you, as you've said as well. So have you kind of thought of like what kind of thing or goals you want to achieve this season, or is everything just a bonus for this year?
I think, it's a 1-year contract at this stage. So I think the key thing with this racing is just finding a place, whatever that is, finding a job and then focusing on that. I think too many guys try and do too many different things. They maybe try and get leader one race and try and help that one another race and maybe try and go for a top 20 or a top 10 and whatever. But I think these days it's all about, it's about winning and getting those points. So you've either got to be able to be a guy that can win or a guy that can help someone win. So me, it's just been focusing on being that guy that can help and add value to the team. Which I think is it's been going good so far. I think that's sort of the role I naturally fit into. which is perfect for me with this team because we've got so many good leaders. The team needs the sort of helpers with the domestiques. So as far as my qualities go, I think it's the perfect match.
You partook in the Ardennes Classics, which is some of my favorite racing, and you guys did particularly well. But you also had that unfortunate incident with Tadej Pogacar in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So how was that week for you essentially?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I did Flesh alone, which obviously Tadej won, and that was really good. I was the guy that was sort of the first to ride and control the race, which the team were really happy with. And then I wasn't actually down originally for Liège, but one of the guys got sick a couple of days before, so I actually flew back from Flesh and then got the phone call, I think, basically as I got back to Girona saying, we've got a guy get sick, can you come back to Belgium? And I couldn't really say no. So yeah, it was nice at that moment also to know that of all the guys that were available for a monument with Tadej, they called me and asked me to go. So that was quite cool. And then again, it was the same thing as Flesh. You know, I was the first guy to ride, which was all going fine. We're sort of 100k in, and then sort of get a message on the radio because when you're riding, you don't really see anything. You know, there's 150 guys behind you, but if you're riding with two, which we were, you're kind of in your own wee world, and you kind of almost forget there's a race going on behind you. So we'd sort of been chugging away for 100k, and then yeah, the message comes on the radio that Tadej crashed, and you sort of it's one of those things that we sort of in that racing environment, and often the radios aren't very good. They're a bit crackling. You don't hear things so good, and this message comes through, and you think, oh, you know, it sounded like they said this. You know, it sounded like they said Tadej crash. Surely not. It's like, can you confirm? Can you confirm? Can you confirm Tadej's out? Type thing on the radio, and they said, yeah, he's done. So it was a hard moment for us to reset as a team. Particularly when you've got a guy like Tadej, because when you have someone like that, you have to put the whole team behind him. So like me, I've already ridden for 100 odd K in the front, you know, so to then try and sort of do a result or something is pretty much impossible. So yeah, and then the other guys were sort of, I think, not struggling with the news as well as much as sort of the change in, I guess, mentality with the race. So it was a bit of a general disaster for us. Just trying to reset after that was a blow that was pretty hard to come back from. And also just in the back of our minds, we all knew that the tour wasn't that far away. And that obviously, you know, Tadej's a big part of this team, and there's that worry too. So it was a tough day for everyone, but it's nice that Tadej sort of got back now. He's back at going to be back at the tour, and he's I think mostly healed.
How is it being a teammate of Tadej Pogacar?
It's good. We actually have a team. Well, it's called a training camp, but it's more of a get together in October where we just go to Abu Dhabi and just do team activities, ride roller coasters, race quad bikes, and basically everything but ride bikes. And literally the whole team's there, all the riders, most of the staff, and it's just a sort of admin camp. You know, we get measured for clothing and a few other things, and the riders sort of get together and have some small parties and things, and good food and just sort of get to know each other. And I think it's probably the best way to have that team bonding is with no pressure, no bikes, just everyone together for a week and just say, you know, you guys can do what you want. These are the activities for the week, and so it's cool to sort of get to know everyone in that environment, including Tadej. But Tadej's the sort of guy that if you didn't know who he was, you'd assume he was just some kid, you know, like just completely normal guy, which is so cool. I mean, I think oftentimes the best guys are like that because they're so relaxed. Because I think when you're that good, there's nothing to prove. There's, you know, the biggest pressure you have is on yourself. There's no external pressure or anything like that. So yeah, in my experience, the best guys are the ones that are the easiest to be around because they're so relaxed because they've got nothing to prove.
I mean, you've done various amounts of racing this year, and how would you kind of, if you're going to put yourself in a box, what would you kind of put yourself as? Because I kind of thought you were a bit all round because you won the road race, you won the time trial, you won here, there, and everywhere kind of thing. And I mean, Pro Cycling Stats is trying to shift you or shove you in the time trial box. But
Yeah,
where would you think your key assets kind of lie as a rider?
I'm definitely a guy that can that's a helper for sure. Like first and foremost, I'm not a guy that's gonna win races. I might never win any races in my career, which is totally fine. But I think definitely a guy that can help in most situations, medium mountains type thing. When I first started with this team, I was often the first guy to ride in the line, and now sort of in the last sort of 2 or 3 races, I've been sort of third or fourth to last, so sort of mid to later in the line, which is really nice knowing that you're not always the first guy, because generally the guy that's first to ride is the guy that's maybe doesn't quite perform, or the guy that's been sick or problems. So not only to be the second guy to ride now, but to be the fourth or fifth is quite cool, particularly in a team like this where we have so many strong riders. To actually be sort of higher in the pecking order in these races is super cool. So definitely, I think for me, the races that are not mountainous, although I haven't really done too many of those yet, but hilly, hard, I think are the races I can do a lot of work in. And I think that raw power that I get from the MyWhoosh racing is super helpful with positioning, whether it's into the bottom of a climb or coming into a sprint. Just being able to have that 30 seconds of really high speed, high power to get someone in the front out of trouble. I think the guys or the leaders really like that about me, that I can sort of get them out of sticky situations and yeah, have that power later in the race.
That sounds like Ardennes classics, or completely. I mean, Flesh
Yeah,
alone, Murderhui is a very nice climb, and yeah, is that the kind of climbs that you like? The kind of short-ish,
uh,
sharp-ish.
yeah. For me, those ones are probably a bit too steep because I'm still sort of 73 kilos or something like that. So when you got guys like
And 1 meter 90, apparently.
yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. So
I'm very short, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's probably anything over sort of, I suppose 8% is probably getting a bit much for the ideal for me, but definitely on those standard climbs, those 6 to 8% type things for 20 odd minutes is perfect. But again, I think the big thing for me is the positioning and the helping the guys and getting them into the right space in the last 10k. I think is sort of where my strengths are. I'm never going to be probably the last guy or the second to last guy. There's so many great riders in this team that I think it's unrealistic to think that you could get a result for yourself at this stage of my career. So it's just a case of, like I said, knowing your position and then doing your job well is the key.
yeah, yeah, the whole thing is just so interesting that kind of you have all this experience as we talk about, and now you're riding at a world tour team, etc., etc. But yeah, how was it like getting this because your calendar this year has been quite I would not mismatch, but you've done a whole variety of races. We spoke about the Ardennes, Basque Country as well, great race that, and also you did a few cobble 1 day races as well.
Yeah.
That's quite a tough introduction to World Tour life, it seems.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't the plan. If you looked at my original calendar in sort of January compared to what I've done, it's extremely different. Partly because we've had so many injuries this year and guys with various problems, but also because I think the team has sort of realised that I'm potentially a bit ahead of where they thought I would be so early on in my career with UAE. So I've certainly had more and more challenges, more and more tests, and there's been more and more after those. So I think that's a good sign that the team is happy. But also I think they're just sort of testing waters to see sort of what I can do, where my limits are, where I can be helpful. But also I think I'm the sort of guy that you can put me in any race, whether it be a Cobble Classic, an Ardennes Classic, or whatever, and I've always got a job that I can always help. So there's sort of nothing I can't do as such with what my role is in the team. So I think the team likes that, particularly these days with racing. It's so intense. Like I said, there's so many crashes and lots of guys getting injured, and guys are so lean now that, you know, if you have a crash at 60 k an hour, it's unlikely you're gonna just jump straight back on the bike. So yeah, there's a lot more of that going on. So the calendar's sort of changing up a lot, and there's a few issues to deal with there. But yeah, it's nice to be, I guess, Mr. Consistent, Mr. Reliable on the team, which I think is how the team sees me.
I think it was in the 2021 after the Omi OP that was this cage fighting or cycling based on the
Yeah,
number of crashes and fight for
yeah,
position.
yeah. It's definitely getting. I think a lot. It was obviously professional in the world tour, but from what I know, and from what I've seen, and sort of my experience at other levels, is that it's definitely getting a lot worse. A lot more pressure, a lot more guys fighting for those last sort of 2 inches type things. So yeah, I think something's got to give eventually. You know, when you've got 170 guys all with radios, the directors all telling the same thing. You don't need to be first into this corner. When you've got a road that's 3 meters wide and you've got 170 guys trying to be first through there, it's a recipe for disaster. So I think, definitely the radios and the amount of information we've got these days kind of adds to that, because everyone gets fed the same stuff and the directors know every single small section of cobbles, whether it be 50 meters or every small town, or whenever there's a bit of a bend in the road or a chicane or something, and they feel that information to the riders, and the riders do their best to try and act on directors' information. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day, but certainly makes for exciting racing.
What is kind of the race that you want to race? Like looking with UAE Team Emirates and hopefully further past the season as well. Is there any race? I mean, Tour de France is probably the big one, but is there any race that you kind of thought, yeah, I kind of want to do that, or like is a Grand Tour or something like that something you really want to do?
Yeah, I think it'll be really cool to do a Grand Tour sort of sooner rather than later. Ideally, I think the Vuelta will be quite cool, because it doesn't have the stress of the Tour and it's got much better weather than the Giro. So that'll be really, really nice, particularly with guys like Juan Ayuso that we have. That's such a big talent. It's always nice to go into a race as a helper, knowing you've got a guy or multiple guys that can really win the races. And that's what we have with UAE. We've always got someone that can win. We're always riding for a purpose, and it makes my job a lot easier. But certainly, I think Grand Tours is where I think my strengths would be. I tend to be a guy that gets better the more I ride, and that hard day after day stuff tends to really suit me. And also, like I said, with more crashes and more issues in races these days, you need guys that can keep leaders out of trouble. I think more and more. You really need your team these days. So yeah, I think I can add a lot of value there. But at the moment, it's not on the cards for the season. But yeah, you never know what can happen based on how the season's gone. Yeah, you never know. So, but otherwise, it'd be nice for the next sort of year or two to take one of those off.
And finally, since you've been growing up in New Zealand, and there's so many New Zealand cyclists as well, but who was kind of your hero growing up? In terms when I've spoken to the Danish guys, it's always like the Reese or Bjarne Reese team, but it's not like in New Zealand you have a Bjarne Reese with a Saxo Bank CSC team. So kind of, what was your inspiration when you were growing up?
Yeah, and I guess supposed to add to that is that we didn't, because of the time zone in New Zealand, we
Oh,
can't watch the tours, the Grand Tours and things sort of live. It's sort of at 1 a.m. or something like that. So we don't often get to actually watch bike races. It's all things you see through, advertising and through news outlets and that sort of stuff. So I guess the guy that I probably looked up to the most would be someone like Fabian Cancellara. He was sort of my era. I think the first tour I watched was the one that Alberto Contador won. So yeah, with Contador and Cancellara and the CSC Saxo Bank, I had the Cervelo bike, the same as Fabian when I was sort of starting. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, those guys. But in saying that, there's definitely been some real top class New Zealand pros over the years with the likes of Hayden Ralston, Greg Henderson, Julian Dean. There's sort of been a few guys that have sort of forged their way over here in Europe, and it's yeah, it's I'm sort of now at the point where I appreciate what those guys have done and what they've been through, and how hard it is, particularly back then. Like it's a lot easier now. There's a lot more Kiwis around, a lot more people that speak English and all that. But I know certainly when I first moved to Europe or came to Europe probably 10 years ago, the landscape was quite different. So I can imagine for those guys, 20 years ago, moving over here would have been super tough. So yeah, it's nice to sort of, I suppose, come full circle with that, and from where I came from, where I started 10 years ago to where I am now, and also to know that I'm now one of the Hayden Ralstons or the Greg Henderson, Julian Deans of the New Zealand cycling world. It's pretty cool to know that they sort of have that influence and that status within cycling in New Zealand, because it's a bit of a fragile sport at the moment back home because of funding, and it's hard to run races with road closures and things, and yeah, so it's nice to be in a position now where I can actually have a strong voice that can help cycling in New Zealand.
I mean, that was such a great place to end. But I have one final mini question. Do all the New Zealand pros have a WhatsApp group?
No, we don't actually. But we do have one for the World Championships that we've just started. So it's the first time we've sort of seen a list of all the Kiwi pros all together. And yeah, it's amazing sort of how many of us there are, but also the different ways that everyone has got into the positions that they're in. It's not everyone's gone through the same development team that sort of brought them into the pro level. Some guys have gone through track, some guys have gone through small French teams, or some guys have gone through the bigger development teams, and there's just a complete different variety of pathways that New Zealand riders have taken to get to the World Tour. So it's cool to see that diversity and to know that there's many different ways to make it. So, and obviously with me with MyWhoosh, it adds another level to that as well. So yeah, that's super cool.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much for the interview as well, Michael. It's been thoroughly enjoyable listening to your amazing journey. I really mean amazing here. Kind of using MyWhoosh, as we said, and now riding for one of the biggest teams, if not the biggest teams in the world. So I wish you all the best of luck. And of course, if you want to follow more about Michael, you can check out his Instagram and Twitter, and all that will be in the description down below. But hopefully see you again at some point. And yeah, all the best for the season.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your time. It's nice chatting.